By now, I think a lot of us have seen this image of a man dressed as a Viking at the US Capitol riots on the 6th of January 2021. In addition, I've seen a lot of pagan and heathen groups denouncing this man as not one of them. So this guy with the Viking horns and the Mjolnir tattoo, Jake Angeli, has been spotted the same costume at multiple Trump rallies throughout 2020. He's known as the QAnon shaman because, of course, he is, and he was photographed multiple times at the riot on Capitol Hill. Well, you know what? The Viking guy may be racist and extremist, but unfortunately, he's not alone. There's an unfortunately long history of this, of white supremacists using pagan and heathen imagery going back to World War II. Unfortunately, these racist pagans seem to pop up everywhere, from online groups to real-life events. Maybe you've seen that at metal or industrial music festivals. And if you're like me, you've just learned to avoid them. But that's not enough anymore. If we're going to deal with racism and white supremacy in pagan and heathen groups, we need to take action. Recently, I noticed that the pagan shop Wolfland is selling merch with slogans used by white supremacists. This really upset me as I've bought stuff from Wolfland before, some Slavic pendants. Before I start, I want to make a few things clear. One, racists don't usually wear shirts that announce, "I'm a racist." No one wants to explicitly announce their bigotry, especially when, like Wolfland, they have a lot of high-profile clients, like the Witcher series on Netflix. Wolfland, which is based in Czechia, makes props for the Witcher series. This is why racist and hate groups like to adopt certain slogans and symbols, because they can be explained away by saying, "I'm just interested in history," or "it's just a joke." These terms are called dog whistles, and they're intended to say a certain message without attracting attention. Think of the phrase international bankers used by people who are anti-Semitic. So there's nothing inherently racist about any Norse symbols, or heathen symbols, or pagan imagery in general. I consider myself a pagan, and I try to be actively anti-racist. It's when these images and these symbols are adopted by white supremacists that it becomes a problem. And 3, to be very clear, I don't want to just cancel Wolfland. I want to use this as a teaching moment, as a way to educate people about these sayings and about these kind of dog whistles. And honestly, hopefully, I would love it if Wolfland took a long look at the merchandise they sell and the message they're sending to their community. Last, and this is important, I don't think that Wolfland are Nazis. I do think they're making money off of selling questionable merchandise, especially when that merchandise is often purchased by people in hate groups or who hold extremist views. And I really think that, given Wolfland's profile, they need to explain why they're doing this. Let's take a look at what Wolfland sells, starting with the Viking Lives Matter shirt. They made public posts promoting this shirt on Facebook and Instagram in fall of 2020. Maybe it's just a joke? Well, after the owner got called out on Facebook, the shop defended the shirt in both their posts, and not as a joke. If you want to read their explanation in full, the link is in the description. In fact, they had 2 similar shirts, Slavic Lives Matter and Gopnik Lives Matter. Gopnik is slang for someone poor and from a former Soviet bloc country. In February 2021, they took the shirts off their website and Instagram, and they also took down their Facebook posts about the shirt as well, perhaps due to the petition I started to bring awareness to this. But Wolfland hasn't said publicly why they did this yet. Looking through their t-shirts, they're just full of right-wing dog whistles. Individually, they can all be explained away by an interest in history. But together, they point to what Wolfland stands for, especially as Nazi Germany uses a number of symbols from the Roman Empire, and white supremacists continue to appropriate Norse symbols. Think of this Othello rune seen at the Charlottesville rally in 2017. They used to sell a shirt that said, "Defend Europe," a slogan used by nationalists during the recent Syrian refugee crisis in Europe. For example, in 2017, a group of extreme nationalists chartered a boat to keep Syrian refugees out of Europe and named the boat Defend Europe. The city and date on the shirt refer to when the Ottoman Empire attacked Vienna in 1683. Is it just a coincidence that the shop chose a date when Muslims attacked Europe? Why not a shirt for Gdańsk, Poland, 1939? That's a much more recent invasion, and considering that Czechia and Slovakia were occupied as well, it's a bit more relevant. Wolfland pulled this shirt the same time they pulled their Viking Lives Matter t-shirt. Their shirt with SPQR, a Roman saying now used by some white nationalists. They recently pulled this shirt from their Etsy shop as well as from their website, though they still have merch with this saying. They sell a shirt that says Molon Labe, a phrase from the Spartans which means come and take them, and is an expression used by some pro-gun activists, as well as the far-right, openly nationalistic and racist neo-Nazi political party, Golden Dawn, who are Greek. If you're thinking this phrase sounds vaguely familiar, that's because Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's a vocal Trump supporter and QAnon conspiracy theory believer, recently wore a mask that says Molon Labe, in addition to her free speech mask. She's currently in a lot of hot water over her past comments. The last one is Deus Vult. I know. You're going to tell me this is just from a video game about the Crusades, which is true. That's the historical origin of the phrase. But I don't think the person who spray painted Deus Vult on this mosque was thinking about video games. This saying, like the others I mentioned, have been co-opted by white supremacists. All of these examples could be explained away by historical references, I guess, if we overlook the fact that these phrases are used by a number of hate groups. So let's take a closer look at one of Wolfland's owners, Krach Mrak, real name Miroslav Dobre, his Facebook account, and who his friends are and his interests. Up until recently, his friends and his likes were public, which is how I found this info. My intention is not to dox anyone or to invade anyone's personal life. However, when a store has a high profile like Wolfland, working with clients like the Witcher series, I think they do sort of owe us an explanation of why they're public with some of the things they believe. He's friends with Daniel Landa, a Czech singer widely criticized for racism and homophobia. Wolfland also makes merchandise for Landa. Wolfland recently took down their page about who they work with and put this up instead. I'll just read from the website. Tip for bestseller. Czechoslovakian paratroopers in Spitfire helped Great Britain to win the war along with allies. Czech and Slovak resistant t-shirt with its 3 prominent members, Jan Kubiš, Czech, Major General Josef Kapchik, Slovak, and in the cockpit Major General Otto Smik, Jewish. 5 years old t-shirt. Wolfland is against all totalitarian regimes. Czechs have bad experience with both of them in the past. There were some attempts to apologize for something we didn't do and didn't even think about. This explanation must suffice. Since this happened sometime during this week, likely on February 9th or 10th, I'm assuming again this references the petition that I started. However, I still have some questions. Back to his friends. He's friends with Igor Górewicz, an important figure in Poland's native faith movement, a pagan group that's anti-Semitic and nationalistic. Górewicz, who used to have neo-Nazi beliefs, likes to rant on Facebook about lefties hijacking the pro-choice protest in Poland in fall of 2020. Well, let's not judge Krach Mrak by the company he keeps. Let's look at the things he likes instead. This anti-EU, anti-immigrant, anti-LGBT political group, for example. The European Defence League, which is explicitly anti-Muslim. Expose Your Local Racist, Urban Edition, a group that says violence against police is worse than violence against blacks. This page, called Long Live Serbia, which is anti-Muslim. Also, I have to point out that Wolfland used to have a lot of products with swastikas or kulveruts on them. The jewelry with swastikas have been removed from their website at the same time as the shirts I mentioned, though the statue with swastikas is still up on their Etsy page as of this video. Same with the things with kulveruts. I can't find any on their website, though I still have the Domove pendant I bought from Wolfland in 2019. You can clearly see the kulverut on him. The kulverut, an ancient Slavic symbol, has unfortunately been adopted by white supremacists. Did the kulverut originally stand for hate and racism? No. Do white supremacists like to wear it now? Yes. And to me, it's a lot more important to tell white supremacists that they can't have this symbol than it is to tell people of color that they should just be okay with this symbol because it's just a joke or it's just history. For example, here's the Christchurch shooter, the New Zealand man who shot up 2 mosques during Friday prayer in 2019 with a kulverut on his backpack. Do I need to mention that the Christchurch shooter also had Vienna at a certain year written on his paraphernalia? I don't think these things are all just a bunch of coincidences, that a shop owner who is public about his extremist beliefs sells shirts with right-wing dog whistles to a community that has problems with white nationalism. Honestly, I don't know a lot of people who are comfortable wearing swastikas or selling them, aside from people who want to appear edgy or very smart or racist. When we make excuses for people like this and for imagery like this, we make our communities welcoming to them, and we make them unwelcoming to people of color. And it's awful because I love all this stuff. Pagan and Viking imagery and history, swords and historical clothing, the Witcher series, metal music. And I want everyone to be able to enjoy this stuff because it's awesome. That's where I really started thinking about these issues, actually, at an industrial music festival in Germany. 2 years ago, one of the largest industrial festivals, Wave Gothic Treffen, hosted a series of talks focused on race and identity within the Gothic community. These talks were well worth going to, even when I hadn't gotten a lot of sleep and had to get up before noon. They also changed how I thought about racism. Before, I figured as long as I wasn't actively racist and supported anti-racist movements, that was enough. But as I listened to these black men and women talk about looking carefully at patches and pins of the people of the metal and industrial shows they would go to, just to make sure they were somewhere that was safe for them, my heart started to sink. Because maybe I've been overlooking racism in one of my own communities. And I knew I had to be active. This isn't just being paranoid or stalking someone's Facebook. A Celtic cross, a symbol used by hate groups, and anti-LGBT graffiti were spray painted on my building in 2019. There are reasons to keep your eyes open for these symbols. It's also worth noting that, like other Central European countries, Czechia has issues with nationalism. I've discussed the rise in popularity of nationalism in Poland on this channel, and Hungary has similar issues as well. Czechia's current president, Miloš Zeman, has called Muslim immigrants an invasion and made keeping Muslim immigrants out a theme of his presidential campaign. I do wonder if this political climate has made views like Wolfland's less noticeable. All this upsets me because I take these things seriously. The pendants that I bought from Wolfland, a Mokosh and a Linala pendant, 2 ancient Slavic images. And I do not want a store that profits off of racist imagery, selling objects that are sacred to me. These are important symbols, and I do not want places like Wolfland coming anywhere near them. Racists do not deserve things like this. So what should we take away from all of this? If you believe that Thor hates racists, there's no Nazis in Valhalla, and Marshanana will come for all the bigots, please take some action with me. Ask Netflix why Wolfland makes the swords for the Witcher series, especially when Netflix has Black Lives Matter in their Twitter bio. Ask Sons of Vikings, a store in the US, why they sell Wolfland's merchandise, when Sons of Vikings says that they're against hate groups in their own About Us description. Ask Etsy why these products are still on their page. It's time for us to speak up and speak out. Thank you for watching. The petition I made is in the video description. Please sign and share, or contact Witcher's press agent directly. And special thanks to Piotr Czochowski for his help with research.